So Jay, you're out, you're free, you're rehabilitated. What's next? What's happening? What you gonna do?
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is my co-host,
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking Podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking Podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Tuesday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 p.m. Central Time. We would like to thank Bob Zerl for his technical contributions. Our sponsor is Ragged Records out of Rock Island, Illinois. We would also like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for letting us use their music for our intro and bumper ending.
All right, what's going on in music news?
Well, it looks like September 26th, we have another National Record Store Day during the pandemic. Anything that tickles your fancy that's being released?
I'm not sure about Record Store Day, but coming up shortly after, I don't pre-order albums very often, but I pre-ordered Joe Bonamassa, Royalty, comes out 23 October. And Queen's and Adam Lambert's Live Around the World comes out October 2nd.
Very cool. And for all you listeners that have been Nothing Shocking podcast listeners previously, Jeff is our new co-host, and he's a Queen fanatic. I'm going to tell you what tickles my fancy. On the 26th, the National Record Store Day, the special release of Roger Waters' version of The Wall that was released back in 1990. It's being a 30th anniversary release. And if you didn't know a little bit about this version of The Wall from back then, it included such artists as The Scorpions, Bryan Adams, The Band with Robbie Robertson, Cyndi Lauper. And you can find this version of The Wall on colored vinyl now. How cool is that?
Yeah, very nice. All right. Our guest coming up tonight is Rob Carlyle and the Compulsions.
Fantastic interview. He's an awesome guy. Heck of an artist, singer, songwriter, you name it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And he's got a wide variety of music, blues, rock, punk. He had an album, Dirty Fun, in 2015, and his newest one coming up,
Ferocious
in 2020.
And we've been lucky enough to hear all the teasers from it, so we were one of the few people that have listened to the entire album for the most part.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. Definitely going to go out and order those.
Absolutely. All right. Well, are we ready to listen to this interview?
Yeah. Have a good night.
All right. Good night. Welcome back to the Nothing Shocking Podcast. Our guest is Rob Carlyle of the Compulsions. Rob, I want to thank you for agreeing to come back on the Nothing Shocking Podcast. We had you on a little over a year and a half ago, and it was such a candid interview. We wanted to have you back on, and you have some exciting news to tell us about. Go ahead.
Well, thanks for having me again. The exciting news, I guess you're referring to the fact that there's a third Compulsions album on the way, and it's coming out on November 13th. It's currently available for pre-order. Anyone who pre-orders the album now on iTunes will instantly get our covers of Dead Flowers and Dust and Bones, and then the rest of the tracks, which are all original material, they magically appear on your hard drive on November 13th. That's how the pre-order works.
Oh, very cool. So this has always got to be an exciting time to have a new album on the horizon. It's obviously we know it's getting released very soon. I guess maybe can you kind of tell us a little bit more about, the process of creating this album and what was it? What's the story behind it?
I guess the story would be we put out the second Compulsions album. It's about 5 years ago now. That was called Dirty Fun, and it got incredible acclaim from anyone who reviewed it. Like, this is the album that's going to put the band on the map, kind of stuff, and dirty rock and roll is back. The same kind of stuff they've been saying about me and the band since the beginning, except like out of a bad movie, as soon as the album came out, the band was pretty much already broken up by that point, meaning that the key players that I was, bringing in to record and perform, it just wasn't happening anymore. And so I essentially, found myself really without a band. So obviously I didn't know what to do. I was beside myself, and I just started, writing new songs rather than try and make a new band to play those songs that we just released. I was like, all right, let me make some new songs and find some new players to make an album with. And that's basically what I've been doing since then, is just writing a whole bunch of songs. And then as you're writing, you start to, imagine what an album worth of the material would be like, and you start putting songs together. Oh, these songs, this batch of songs is going to work really well. And so that's the 10 songs that are on this new Compulsions album, which is called Ferocious. These ones just sort of like, they seem to work. Why do they sort of work? It was just the perfect combination of like, some lighthearted kind of funny stuff, or I guess you would say, and then there is a lot of like, darkness and anger and what have you on the new album, and that really was also reflective of like what I was going through at the time, with the fact that everybody's telling you have this awesome band that's going to take over the world, and then the band just kind of like falls apart on you. So you could just imagine how you'd feel, and so a lot of that comes through, I think, on the album. There's a definitely, I don't know if you picked up on it, but there's a hefty dose of fuck you on there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things that I like about the Compulsion so far, from getting started and listening, good mixture of blues, a little bit of electronic, rock, punk, a little bit for everybody. And I liked your cover of Dead Flowers and Dust and Bones, you mentioned, and then there's, like you said, there were some pretty funny songs in there. Killer in the Woodshed jumped out.
Yeah,
and
it's a super violent lyrics, but delivered in a way that's kind of like humorous. And yeah,
I mean, I'm Saturday the 14th movie, horror comedy film.
yeah. I mean, so that was getting back to what I was saying. I try to cover a variety of topics as a songwriter, ever since the beginning. And one topic that I knew that I hadn't really touched on yet was violence. And you got sex, drugs, rock and roll. Those are the three big classics, and then violence comes right after that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, let me get into some murder and mayhem. And so there's a lot of that on this album. Hopefully you picked up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and it's handled, and it's handled, it's handled in a way, even though there's a lot of super violence on there, it's handled in a funny way, but then also like very deadly serious as well,
Well, I guess that would lead into the next question. I guess the next question I would have is that, your writing process for this album, as far as, you're getting older, maturity kicks in a little bit. How did the writing process of the songs differ from albums of the past?
I don't, it's always kind of been the same. I mean, people ask you that kind of question, like, how do you go about writing songs? And one great way is like, the title. What's the, you have a great title that you come up with, and like, what's a title that's going to make the average listener go, damn, I got to press play and hear that song. And I started out doing it that way. Like, great titles with like real visual imagery, even in the title. Going back to the beginning, like Shake Hands with the Devil. Like, it just seemed like that's an enticing title. Dance Around the Fire, Howlin' for You. Like, those are some of the early ones, and they kind of just like had these great, almost like Pulp Fiction movie or book titles or whatever that just sounded really enticing. So titles is always a great way to start. And I remember as a kid, reading something by John Fogerty interview, and he even said that, John, how do you go about writing songs? And he said, I try and come up, a lot of times I start with the title. What's a great title? And try and figure it out from there. So titles are always great. And, the other way is like you got an awesome riff, like you got this great riff on the guitar, and you're like, how do I take this riff and turn it into a song? So there's, riffs, titles, an assortment of ways. But that's never really changed. I guess what's different this time is, again, going back to it, there's just a bit more violence on this album. I don't know why I'm laughing, but, I guess because you've heard it, so you know how much violence is on this album.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
No, just trying to think. Yeah, a couple of the ones that jumped out at me. I liked Band of Thieves and Dirtbag Blues. I think that one covered the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll all in one song.
Exactly. And I think it's like that's 60 seconds. Yeah. Yeah, it's sex, drugs, rock and roll, and a guitar solo in 60 seconds. So yeah.
Well, that kind of, I know this might be a slightly odd question to ask you, but I feel as though many of your songs have that storyteller mentality. Is there that like hidden folk singer songwriter deep within you somewhere?
Oh, totally. And I think if you're a good songwriter, like, you kind of have to be, the storytelling thing is totally key to great songs. And, without dropping too many names, like all your favorite songs, I'm sure there's like a very clear, lead character who's either telling you the story or telling you about somebody else, and it's got a beginning, middle, and an end, and there's maybe a bit of a moral to it. A lot of my favorite songs do that, whether it's Bob Dylan or the Stones, Led Zeppelin, again, John Fogerty, Jimi Hendrix, all those types of people. They're not just like, there's a concept behind each song, there's a story, behind each song, and that's why the song is executed the way it is, and what key it's in, and what tempo it's in, and how it's produced, and all that kind of stuff is because there's an idea at the heart of each one of those songs, and so those guys are all great artists, and they just kind of like execute it to the nth degree. Just like your favorite movies, your favorite books, your favorite TV shows, it's all the same thing. There's an idea that runs through the center of all of it, and that's to me also the best songs. There's a story that's in the middle of all of it. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So everything you do is in service to that story or in service to the song, however you want to think of it.
So, Rob, you mentioned that you had a new band for this album. Who are some of the players that you have?
For this album, well, I had after I guess as the previous lineup started to fall apart, I drafted a gentleman named Bumblefoot to play around with in the studio, and we put out 3 singles in 2016. We did covers of we did drastic reinterpretations of the Beatles and Kiss and The Cure, which is a pretty wild assortment of bands to throw in one batch. And so, I love Bumble, and I brought him in for a bunch of songs, The previous drummer is a gentleman named Frank Ferrer. He's on a bunch of these songs. He's also in Guns. He was in Guns N' Roses with Bumbo as well. The bass player who's on most of the songs is a guy named Alec Morton, who I have known of for, at least since the early 90s. He was in Raging Slab, and I was always a big fan of him. And actually, I had tried to get him to be in the Compulsions very, very early on, and he was just too busy. I don't think he even pressed play. Back then, you used to, give people CDs. I don't even think he pressed play on the CD. He turned me down, but I still remained a fan of him. And so I got him now, and he's on, at least eight out of the 10 songs. Who else? Oh, so then to replace Frank, I brought in a drummer named Brian Delaney, who has also been in the Dolls, and he does a lot of work with Melissa Etheridge on the road. I don't know if he's on any Melissa Etheridge albums, but certainly on the road. And then who else? Oh, I got Earl Slick from David Bowie and John Lennon fame. He is on about 3 songs on this album. And then with all these guys that I just mentioned, I have a whole nother album worth at least of material with the same cast of characters. I just need to finish it. So those are the guys, and then there's some other key players on there. There's a guy named Hugh Poole who has long been associated with me and the Compulsions. He's produced a bunch of tracks. He's known for guitar mostly and harmonica. But he I guess you could call him a multi-instrumentalist. He can do a lot of other things, percussion, a little bit of piano here and there. He's on this. There's a backup singer named Nikki Richards, and her resume is just insane. There's everybody on there from, Mariah Carey, Madonna, Whitney Houston, Mick Jagger, Lenny Kravitz. So she's on, she's especially hear her all over Dead Flowers, and then anytime you hear a female voice on the album, that's her. Like the screaming at the end of, if you hear that screaming at the end of Band of Thieves, that's actually her.
Okay.
That was kind of fun to ask her, hey, would you mind screaming like as if somebody's doing really bad things to you? And she was like, nope. She was like such a good sport. She was like, no problem. She just nailed it.
Nice.
And well, who else? Oh, there's a saxophone player named Craig Dreyer, and he plays around town a lot in his own band. He's also worked with Keith Richards and Warren Haynes, and there's a few more. There's a pretty big cast of characters on this album, but those are the ones that appear on most of the songs. Andrew Sherman, actually, like I have to mention, Andrew Sherman is a piano player, a synthesizer player, and he's on anytime. I think there's keyboards on every song on this album except for Dirtbag Blues. There's some sort of keyboard, whether it's a synthesizer or a boogie-woogie piano or whatever. And so that's kind of a first for the Compulsions, is to have that much keyboards on an album. But I think if you took out the keyboard, you would actually miss it. It was definitely adds a lot to these songs.
Yeah, I agree.
We talked about criteria as far as, you looking for musicians to, record these songs with you. When you look in the future, how do you kind of narrow that down for yourself as far as, the type of musician that you want to, play your music?
I just look for people who are great. There's really no other criteria, but are they great? Some of these folks that I mentioned, come recommended by the producer. Who's a gentleman on this particular album. This is the first album where it's just really one producer, and his name is Ken Rich. And I've been working with Ken, and I mentioned Hugh Poole earlier, but Ken and Hugh I've been working with. Those are the only producers that I've ever worked with. So Ken recommends a lot of people. Like Ken was the one that recommended, Nikki Richards, the backup singer, and Craig Dreyer, and assorted others. There's, a few other saxophone and keyboard players on there. And so, it's just really like, are you great at what you do? And, are you an easy hang, really? And all these people on this album are like just seasoned session players. I've done other albums in the early days, especially where they were more like, there were seasoned players on, there were session players on there, but some of the other albums, it was like, whoever like the hot chick guitar player in the neighborhood was at the time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I have worked with local level, players that are well known, on the bar circuit, I guess you would call it. So really, it's just like, are you great at what you do, and are you not a pain in the ass?
Absolutely. This goes to the next question. I'm going to let Jeff ask the next question after this one. I'm kind of hogging up. Sorry, Jeff.
Oh, no, you're fine.
How do you view yourself as a musician? Do you view yourself as a singer that plays guitar, or are you a guitar player that sings? How does that work for you?
Yeah, I mean, I want to be a better guitar player. I mean, I'm always working at that, and that's the funny thing is, like, that's the thing that, like, I get to do the least. Although I've been buckling down in the past couple of years and trying to do whatever I can to, like, learn a bunch of stuff that I just neglected learning. I don't know if this answers your question, but, like, really, all I really wanted to do in the beginning was I just wanted to be a rhythm guitar player in a cool band and play, like, badass riffs. That's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a lead singer. I didn't want to be a band leader. I just wanted to be a rhythm guitar player, like my heroes are like Keith Richards is my big hero. I mean, Joe Perry is more of a lead guitar player, but that kind of guy is that kind of vibe is like really, what I want to do. Of course, the king of the rhythm guitar players, Malcolm Young is a huge hero. I kind of just wanted to do that, but in the end, I ended up taking on all these other roles, being a songwriter and especially being to say singer is like a stretch, vocalist. But I just couldn't find anybody around town that could do what I wanted to do. So I just started doing it, or at least could do what I wanted to do and not be a pain in the ass. Let's go back to that. Because that is really important. Is like the people, if somebody's difficult to work with, it really doesn't matter how good they are. Like, eventually it's going to come to an end, and it has with a lot of guys, and unfortunately. But you got to be easy to work with, and you got to be a good hang, and of course you got to be amazing at whatever your instrument happens to be. So, I guess I'm sort of answering your question. I don't really think of myself as a singer at all. I think that, like, I just basically bark into the microphone so the band knows where we are in the song, But I do really take the songwriting really seriously. Even though hopefully maybe it sometimes doesn't sound like I do, but I do take it seriously. And producing the albums and getting them to sound the way they do, a real attention to detail, even though, it's a lot of work making it sound like you just slapped it together, let me tell you. But the idea is for it to sound like it's been pretty much slapped together, but there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes to achieve that. So I mostly think of myself probably as a songwriter, although I want to be more of a guitar player. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
All right. Obviously with COVID and everything going on, kind of put a kibosh in the world. What going forward? Do you got any plans for touring behind this album, or doing any live shows in the future?
Yeah. Well, this will go to answering that question. I was, right before the pandemic hit, I was putting together another band because, this is going back February, March, January even. I was like, I don't know that I really have a Compulsions lineup that can play a show. Like, if I book a show and say it's going to be the Compulsions, I think people have a sort of expectation that there's going to be at least a certain amount of characters that they've been hearing about on stage with me. And I just wasn't really sure that I was going to get enough of them to, satisfy the audience. So I started making another band with our own material. And the plan was that we were going to, obviously play our own stuff. We were going to play whatever Compulsions material would be appropriate, throw some covers in there. And it was going to be more of a bluesy, rootsy version of what I do. And so a lot less punk and metallic, noises, sounds. So that was the idea, was that I was going to have more of a bluesier band to hope even, I'd love to play even the blues clubs around town, with this lineup. Of course the pandemic hit, so that's been, everything has been sidelined now. And so, as far as the Compulsions playing anytime soon, there is, a promoter who has an idea for, a socially distanced concert series, and I'm not going to give away any details because it's his concept. I don't know if we're a part of it, if we're going to be a part of it, but we're talking about it with him. It's not the drive-in thing. It's completely different, and on paper it's very cool. And me and three of the guys that I mentioned are into it. I spoke with Bumblefoot about it. I spoke with Brian Delaney about it, and I spoke with Alec Morton about it, and we're all down to do it. I don't know if it's going to work out, but I have we have a representative who's talking with this guy, and I'm just waiting to find out. So there's that, and then I am actually playing a show this Friday, and with the new coronavirus guidelines, what's this? The state doesn't allow you to advertise or promote the show. Really, it's just got to be like, incidental music is what they call it. But I'm going to give it a go, and I'll advertise it on your podcast for anybody. I don't know when this is going to air, but it's going to be me at Marshall Stack in the Lower East Side. I'm going to play, about an hour's worth of music, maybe a little bit more. And, the way it works is you sit, the artists are seated, perform inside the bar with the windows open, and then the patrons are seated, out on the side. I don't know if they're doing this where you guys live, but there's, outdoor seating where like there's seats kind of like out on the, way out on the sidewalk, almost out on the street, kind of a thing. So I'm going to be doing that just for fun and to, stay busy and keep my chops up. So there's that. Beyond that, like I said, there's this socially distanced concert series if it comes to light. But things are really up in the air right now for everybody, as I'm sure you realize.
Absolutely, yeah.
When it comes to playing out.
Okay, so we're running out of time here, so I got one last question for you. It went by fast. You're such a good talker, man. So, all right. So Jeff and I love the cover of Dust and Bones. It's a GNR tune, and we know that you have some, tentacles from the GNR camp. Is there a story by, you chose to cover that song? Is there anything behind that?
Well, I always thought it was a great song, and some of the lyrics in that song are just amazing. About first of all, it's kind of a spooky, creepy, eerie song about infidelity, which is always a great topic. But then there's some really great lines about like life, time moves on. That's the way we live and hope to see the next day. Like all that kind of stuff I love. There's no logic here today. Do what you got to, go your own way. Mm-hmm. Like that's really good, deep, stuff that you can actually live your life by. So I did love that about it. I love it's got even the GNR version has got a very like Rolling Stonesy, almost Aerosmithy kind of vibe. So it definitely fit in with my with the vibe that the Compulsions is known for. And then also I did a contest or a what do you call it? I took a survey on Facebook a few years ago, and I asked people like if you could recommend the Compulsions to do any cover, what would it be? And there was some great ideas. So this one kid recommended this, which reminded me of my I guess my admiration of the song. Some kid recommended Dust and Bones, and I was like, that's a great idea. So that kind of cemented it for me. There was another song that somebody recommended, which was a great idea, which was it the Sensational Alex Harvey Band has a song called it's about a snake. I'm gonna get it wrong, but it's either like King Snake or Black Snake or something like that. And I didn't know the song, and I went to go play it, and I was like, that would be another really good one for us to do. It's super like, I don't know if you're familiar with the song, but it's a great dirty rock and roll song. So anyway, that was the other thing too, was I did like a survey, and this kid recommended it, and I was like, that is a great idea, and we got to do it.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to make one suggestion to you for in the future. I think you covered that song from Keith Richards. Don't Take It So Bad? That would be an excellent song for you to cover.
Oh, of course. I love that whole album. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're running out of time. We're gonna have to invest in a larger memory for this show, because great storytellers like you need much more time than what we can give you right now. So, Rob, I want to thank you so much for this opportunity. You've been kind on both occasions, and I'll be in touch maybe within a week or so. Hopefully we'll have it all edited and ready to go and up online for you.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's always a blast.
All right, man. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
It's been great talking to you.
Take care, fellas. Be well. All right.
Bye-bye.